Welcome to the Eating at a Meeting podcast. I'm your host, Tracy Stuckrath, dietary needs expert, certified meetings manager, certified food protection manager. I have searched the globe to find people and businesses who are creating safe, sustainable, and inclusive food and beverage experiences for their employees, guests, and communities. In each episode, you will find authentic conversations about how food and beverage impacts inclusion, sustainability, culture, community, health, and wellness. I know that sounds like a lot, but we're going to cover it all. Are you ready to feed engagement, nourish inclusion, and bolster your bottom line? If so, let's go.
Hi, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Eating at a Meeting. As you can tell, I am not in my normal space. I'm actually in a telephone booth in the Serena Hotel in Washington, D.C. I'm up here for a convention, and I wanted some quiet space, so I'm sitting in a telephone booth. But it doesn't stop me from going live here and to talk to these two ladies right here. I'm very excited. This is a special episode of Women's HERstory Month, that play on History Month. And Stephanie and Vivián here, getting to feed people is a privilege and a joy for them. And I wanted to introduce you to them. I know them from La Dame Stay Escoffier, which is this fancy term for an organization that we belong to, because we represent the top tier of women in hospitality. Probably is pushing it a little bit, but yes, we are the top tier in the women in the hospitality industry. So hello, Stephanie and Vivián.
Hey, Tracy.
And I need to clarify too that they are the co-owners of Sweet Potatoes (Shut Your Mouth) restaurant in Winston-Salem, North Carolina, as well as Mrs. Orr's Kitchen that is right next door. So they are joining us from Winston-Salem. So hi.
Thank you for inviting us on, Tracy.
Thank you.
Oh, you're welcome. And I one of the biggest reasons that I wanted to have you on, besides the fact that you're just awesome, is the fact that you two have owned a restaurant for 20 years. You just celebrated Sweet Potatoes' 20th anniversary. And and when I ask you what your biggest accomplishments were beforehand, you're like, one of you said another day open, and the other one is that we survived the pandemic.
Yeah.
So tell us about 20 years, because you're in downtown Winston-Salem, right?
Yes.
Yep. So tell us about having a restaurant for 20 years. What have you seen in that 20 years and from when you started to now?
Well, we were in the area that we're in, we're actually the first restaurant in that area.
Oh, wow.
It's now called the Arts District. But when I was growing up, and I grew up in Winston-Salem, it was not an arts district. It was a dump. My grandmother called it what did she call it?
The Buzzard Roost.
The Buzzard Roost. It was pretty bad. But when we came back, they had kind of started changing it. And then we were it was a place that we could afford to open a restaurant because there was nothing there. So we were the first, and then a few restaurants came after we got there, and the whole area changed from just like mom and pop stores to like big buildings and all sorts of stuff.
When we first started, there was artist studios and all, and people, it was working artists. They lived and worked in their studio because they couldn't afford rent in two places. And it was a quirky but comfortable neighborhood, and we wanted to be a part of something, and it was a cool neighborhood. And so we opened the restaurant, and shortly thereafter, people saw that there was potential. Because when we first opened, if you were driving down the street, if you were driving down Trade Street after 5:00, you were either lost, looking for Sweet Potatoes, or looking for the one music venue that was in town. And they did concerts every night. So you were pretty much lost. And then people saw potential, and there's countless restaurants and other eateries and bars and coffee shops and tea houses and all manner of things. And so we appreciate the value and what people had seen the value in what we did and wanted to add to that. And so it's a really great neighborhood, and we enjoy it.
Mm-hmm.
Well, you're the pioneers of that area then.
Some people say that.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
We were just one of the first.
We were one of the first.
But,
somebody had to be first.
Right.
But there was some kind of business there. So there's always someone before you. And we just kind of followed that step.
And your grandmother, I'm assuming, was like hesitant of you opening up in that area?
No, not necessarily. She, it had changed from when I was a little kid. I mean, we weren't allowed to go on to Trade Street.
Wow.
So, I mean, it was just that bad, but it had changed a little bit to where, there were like, regular people and businesses down there. But when I was a little kid, I mean, it just was not someplace that you kind of circumvented that area. And it started to change. So I don't really think she was a little bit surprised that the area was, a place that
we would want to open a restaurant.
Yeah, until she came down and saw the restaurant and saw the area, because she had since stopped traveling as much without, me taking her or whatever, because she didn't drive at all. So, but I think she appreciated the fact that we could.
Mm-hmm. And her the restaurant next door is named after her.
Mm-hmm. See, my grandmother didn't read or write, and she was a domestic. She worked for white families in town, and probably was one of the best cooks that I know, especially not reading or writing very well. And she did everything from taste. So it was, to name the restaurant after her was kind of just a salute to people like her. And there's lots of women that, fed their families as well as white families. So they ate what we ate for the most part, and it's sort of in honor of that. And the fact that we use a cast iron skillet to fry chicken in, which is a lot of people do, but it's kind of like taking a big chance to do that for a restaurant solely. Your way to fry chicken.
But anytime you come in, if we're cooking in cast iron skillets, and there's a little fat back in the grease.
Yeah, it just
wow.
And it's a small space, and it really does feel like grandma's kitchen, if you would. It's just a counter space to eat, and you talk to the folks while they're cooking your food. And it's simple fare, but it's really good. Fried chicken in a cast iron skillet with the basic sides that go with it, like potato salad and pintos and greens. And of course, a sweet potato biscuit or sweet potato cornbread, because that's just the way it is.
Well, and you just describing that reminded me of my grandmother's kitchen, my dad's mom up in Baltimore. Like, not much bigger than the telephone booth I'm in here, but we sat at the little kitchen table and she was snapping peas or frying something on the stove right there. And it was just, that's what that is. And it's that memory of grandma. Yeah.
And you get the best conversations with the people beside you or the person that's cooking. But it's ironic, Stephanie grew up at her grandmother, and her mom did not cook. Her mom cooked for survival and just for sustenance for her kids. But her grandmother really had a passion for feeding. And she did it very well. And so when Stephanie wound up going to culinary school, she realized just how skilled her grandmother was. She just didn't have the culinary terms to call it.
Yeah.
But I mean,
it was just sort of, it really kind of interesting to look back and to watch her do this. And then they put all these fancy culinary terms. And I realized that if I had just been paying attention in the first place, I got to save myself a whole bunch of time and money, So I was like, okay.
Which goes back to the story I was talking to you before we went live, is that when you first met, you were burning food.
Yeah, I had no interest in cooking whatsoever. None, not even a little bit. I left home. I went to, your parents, your mom or grandmother cooks for you, and you go to college and you eat in the cafeteria. And then I left, and I went to New York for theater. and I didn't cook. There was a pizza slice or, something, a hot dog or whatever. I just never cooked. I just never had any need to cook. So
and then she met me.
Yeah. And then, so, I had my own little apartment and everything, and I having to cook stuff and cook for someone other than myself. I would burn. I think it's nerves. You burn stuff, burn water when we first met,
But the first meal was inedible.
Completely inedible.
It was totally inedible.
Yeah.
Like, I come from a large family, and you learn to be thankful for whatever someone offers you. And you're polite. But I put it in my mouth. I started chewing, and the feel, the taste, it was greasy. It was burnt.
It was supposed to be eggplant parmesan, and I didn't actually bread the eggplant, so it was a little bit greasy.
A lot.
Yeah, it's like
So and I'm like, I don't want to be rude, but I just couldn't.
Yeah.
But fortunately,
and
she didn't take too much outward offense to that.
No, and so the theater is not for everyone, and it wasn't actually for me. So, like most theater people, you work in a restaurant, you wait tables, you bartend, you do whatever. And I waited tables for a while, and I bartended for a while, and I eventually moved from the front of the house to the back of the house, managing a restaurant. And my first night at that restaurant, one of the cooks walked out.
Oh.
And it's like, okay, now what? So I was so pissed. Can I say pissed?
Yes, you can.
I was really pissed and irritated, just that I did not know what to do. So my thought was, okay, I'll just go and learn how to cook so that I won't be in that position again, because, I'm thinking I'll be doing, restaurants. I kind of like the whole restaurant thing. So I figured I will learn how to do that so I can be more stable and know what I'm doing. So, and I went to culinary school in Baltimore, and I was completely amazed at how I took to it. And so when I went to college in East Carolina, I kind of frittered away my time and my parents' money. But culinary school I was paying for myself. So you take a different perspective, and I was like intent on, getting what I could, but I loved it. And so the whole cooking aspect, it kind of all started to click. So that's what I do, and I got the opportunity to feed my mom and my grandmother, and they appreciated that. And I appreciated being able to do what they did for me, especially my grandmother.
So Tracy, Stephanie's extremely humble and modest. And so she says that theater wasn't for her. She did it for a while, and maybe, some things are for a season and some things are for a lifetime. So she had her season in theater. But the thing that is definitive, no matter what, an artist will be an artist. And so when one art form falls away, another art form will take its place. And I believe, and so do thousands of others who have come through the doors of Sweet Potatoes and Missouri's Kitchen, her art form simply changed from theater to culinary. And that's I'm sticking to it.
I love that. And it is, but cooking is another form of theater. Not just art, but theater. I'm like, you're in the back, you're orchestrating different pots and pans and cast iron skillets and people and, front of the house and the back of the house. I'm like, I love that. So
I think that might add a little bit to our ability to work together over the last 20 years and make it happen. I went to college and, I kind of flittered away as well. But my major was technical theater. Okay. So I really liked being a stage manager and wanted to learn more about lighting and that kind of thing on the backside. And so I think that helps a lot in forming the day as the front of the house service, as she forms it for the back of the house service. So we have that we have that little extra thing.
Yeah, the little ebb and flow of making it work.
Yeah.
Because you have to set the stage for customers.
Some days are easier than others,
Yeah.
but for sure, everyone's heard the show must go on. And so most days it does.
Well, and I mean, but I think that's a really important thing to talk about in general too, is because Brian Stapleton, do you know Brian? He was chef down at Carolina Inn for a while, but he's like, the front of the house or the back of the house is no better than the front of the house. You know, I mean, because the front of the house is representing you people wise and ambiance wise, but if the back of the house, if they don't have it right, the back of the house doesn't have it right either, or you're only as good as the front of the house. So I think that's really important that you have that really good ebb and flow of how that works. Yeah.
You know, we have 2 feet for a reason. And if one shoe hurts, you're just not going to walk very well, no matter what the other shoe feels like.
Yeah. So, you know, from the 20 years, what have you and being women and being Black women in the hospitality industry and owning a restaurant for the last 20 years, what have you seen change?
Well, I guess it was very difficult. I don't really understand why. It was very difficult when we first started. Vivián, being a restaurant manager like 20 some years ago, had a very difficult time in getting a job as a restaurant manager. You know, whether, I mean, and the glass ceiling still exists, which is in part why we ended up opening a restaurant. And I, as a person trying to be a professional person in the kitchen, had a difficult time, especially like we went to South Carolina to Charleston, and I had one guy just flat out say, I don't hire women in my kitchen. It's like, okay, then. And then eventually worked at a kitchen that was all women. And Vivián never did get a job as a restaurant manager in South Carolina, which is why, you know.
I've managed different restaurants or been a part of a management team of restaurants across the country, mainly chain restaurants. But in South Carolina in the late 90s, it was sexism and racism, and it was fairly blatant. It's kind of out loud. What we find now is there is just, not sure, there's more recognition of skill set, and then it goes to sex, as opposed to sex and then skill set. You do see more women who are running things, managing things. They are leading kitchens. They are being recognized. I mean, the talent was always there. The skill was always there. It's just the recognition. And when we see women in whatever the field is being lifted and recognized for their strength, for their ability, it can't be denied. So no matter what the venue, no matter what the skill set, if you can raise one, you raise us all. We all take a step forward because of it. And that's what I see happening now.
Yeah.
But we still have a long way to go.
Right. And my guest tomorrow is doing that in Charleston. Randy Weinstein she was the director of events for Charleston Wine and Food for 7 years. And so she started her organization, FAB, Food and Business, or Females in Business, to elevate that to exactly what you're saying, Vivián, because it's still a lot of work to do. Right. And so what advice did your grandmother give you in doing this, or any other woman give you in doing this? And Vivián, do you have another woman besides Stephanie's grandmother that gave you advice as well?
She didn't really. Her advice was food centered.
Peel the potatoes.
Peel the potatoes. So I been doing big food, 50 pounds of potato salad or something. And so you get the red loose potatoes and you don't peel them, you just cut them up and you make potato salad. And I took her some one day. So her thing was, baby, that tater salad is good, but you need to peel them taters. So I took that as, that's good, that you have good food. You have to present it how people want to have it, So she liked the potato salad. It just didn't look the way she expected it to look.
It wasn't finished.
You
took a shortcut that.
Yes.
Yeah.
So no shortcuts.
No shortcuts. And there's no shortcuts in business.
There's no shortcuts in business. There's no shortcut. There's shortcuts in kitchens, but sometimes it shows. So you have to do the thing the way it's supposed to be done, period. So when she would say, I would bring her something, and she would say, ooh, did I make this? Thank you.
That was the best compliment.
So I bet. Yeah. Wow.
And for me, my mom, I'm the youngest of 6.
Okay.
And I grew up in DC in the 60s and 70s. And my parents, both of them, they were really great examples, and I think change agents for us, for my siblings and I, in that they made it very clear from a very young age, anything that we could dream to do, we could do.
Okay.
Any place we wanted to go, prepare yourself, and then you can go there. So there was no limits to where we went, what we did, or how we thought, other than what we put on ourselves. Because they set that example. My dad was, my parents were older compared to my classmates. My dad was a World War II vet.
Okay.
When he came home from the service, he had fought in the European theater, but he didn't have the right to vote. But he had 6 kids. He worked for the federal government, and he came home many days frustrated, but he didn't let that frustration fall on us. He was determined that we could, and he was going to show by example that you can and will go as far as your mind will take you. And I can't ask for a better lesson or a better set of teachers than my mom and dad for that.
That's awesome. And did they get to experience the restaurant?
No, neither one of them. But all of my siblings did,
or do.
And I had one aunt, my father's youngest sister, and she was a big proponent, great cheerleader for us, and we just lost her a few weeks ago. But she cheered us on from day one. Yeah.
That's awesome. How are you, and I know you're very active in the community in Winston-Salem. I know the Convention and Visitors Bureau loves you dearly, at least the one woman I know that from the Convention and Visitors Bureau. How important is it as a restaurant and restaurateurs and chefs to support your local communities? I mean, you feed them through the restaurant, but do you do other things in using the food and beverage that you make and the community and the atmosphere that you have in the restaurants to give back to communities?
We try, just the day-to-day of working, especially the last few years, it's really taken its toll on energy and mindset. But we have always been committed to being a part of the community that we live in and that supports us. We work closely with Second Harvest Food Bank and to try and help. And we reach out to several different organizations that have a far-reaching arm into those that are marginal and those that have the biggest need. But
when we first opened, we hired people that a lot of people would not hire, people that, had just gotten out of prison or whatever. So, and we still do, we hire people based on how they are, how they come to us now, as opposed to what they did in the past. Mm-hmm. And we are in a position of being able to teach people. We have the patience because we're there to we've seen people leave with a career that they normally would not have had. They can go someplace else and do the same thing because we have the patience to give them a skill. And hopefully we still do give people the opportunity to learn. If you're willing to come in and roll your sleeves up, we'll teach you whatever, we'll show you whatever we can, and whatever we know, you'll know, good or bad. But you'll have something to stand on and feed yourself, make a living, an honest living. Hopefully we've done that. We've seen people grow. I mean, we're so proud of some of the people that have come through our doors. They're doing well. I mean, and that's all we can do is give people the opportunity and be in the community that we live in. I mean, you can't just take. You have to kind of participate in order to stay alive for 20 years.
Yeah.
How did the pandemic impact you all?
Yeah.
In every imaginable.
It still does a little bit.
A lot. It still does a lot. You know, we're climbing. We're just 10 days away from 3 years since the shutdown. March 17th at 5:00 will just be bored into my memory forever. That's when the governor's order essentially closed our doors, and it changed everything. It felt like you were on a merry-go-round that was out of control and spinning, and you couldn't get off, you couldn't sit down. It was dizzying. Stephanie, over the first 6 months or so, she must have changed and created 5 or 6 different menus to try and accommodate either product that we couldn't get, product that we needed to only put in a box because we were only doing to go, product because we lost a lot of staff, and so the skill set had changed, so we couldn't do this or we couldn't do that. Some things just don't taste good coming out of a box. It needs to be plated and served, right then. It was the fear of not being able to sustain yourself. How are you going to pay your rent? How are you going to pay the light bill? How are you going to pay staff when you did open your doors back? Then do you have staff, and what staff do you have? And we're still navigating that. The order has been lifted for an extremely long time now, because for a long time we were running at 50% capacity by the governor's order. And now we're probably at 60% capacity because we don't have the staff to go any further. And no matter, and it doesn't seem to matter what kind of business you have, the challenge of getting staff in is just, I don't know. But it is a challenging time still, but we're very fortunate. We're very blessed. A lot of our restaurant friends have struggled, and they have closed restaurants and shuttered different kinds of entertainment venues, and some have just decided to leave the restaurant industry altogether. And it's what we love. It's what we love. But
it's tough. I mean, it's just a very difficult business to be in when there's, you're depending on, a supply chain. You're depending on, customers' whims. It's a very difficult, and a lot of people in the industry that worked in the industry don't work in the industry anymore because it is difficult. And that shutdown showed them that, okay, so you mean my whole way of life can be diminished just like that? How am I supposed to wait tables at home? So let me do something else. Let me go find something else to do that's not quite as volatile as this business seems to be. I mean, I guess it's like it's sort of like the same thing with the theater. I mean, did you just shut down, but they created ways to do what they did. but you're no longer in person anymore. So it just, I'm just always amazed at having survived, can actually say I survived a pandemic.
Yeah.
This is something that you only saw in black and white movies.
I know, right?
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's just been just kind of a weird.
Yeah. I think at the part of it was like, oh, we're in a Will Smith movie or somebody's movie, right? That this is happening to us. But I mean, and I'm as an event planner, I'm like, I lost all of my, business because they're like, you can't meet in person, even though you're in a huge convention center that's 50,000 square feet, you can't have more than 25 people in there. Right? But yeah. So, and Vivián, you just said it's your life, it's what you love. So what is the greatest joy of what you do?
Being the steward. We try and be good stewards, and the fact that I get to feed people. There's so many different ways to feed someone. You can give them a plate. You can listen to them. You can give them a safe space. You can give them a hug. And sometimes that plate is the hug and all those other things. But when you get to feed someone and you see them receive what you offer with Thanksgiving, it's a wonderful feeling. And it's my blessing. It really is.
Steph, do you have anything to add to that? I love that.
I see that the different people that come to you get a different perspective from the back looking out. You see that people come in with all sorts of problems, and that Vivián has created this space where everybody's comfortable. People have come in to grieve, to celebrate, and food is important, but I see that she and the front of the house staff have created this cocoon where people come in and they're fed in so many different ways that it's interesting to watch from the back looking out. They look comfortable, that maybe somebody would take their shoes off and roll over and take a nap if they could. If the space allowed it, they're that comfortable. And Vivián has created this space. And we've been in two different spaces. Our first location was like tiny, 13 tables. And the space that we're in now is, twice or three times as large. But the feeling is still a cocoon of comfort. So I think it's gratifying to see that people are comfortable in our space, and it's mostly because of Vivián.
Well, and then the food that you make.
And food. Yeah.
Thank you, Tracy. Sure.
The food that fills their bellies and nourishes them.
Yeah. It gives them a hug from within.
Exactly. And okay, so on that note, ma'am, this woman who was burning food and two greasy eggplant Parmesan, you're now a semifinalist for Best Chef in the Southeast. Second year in a row, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
I keep saying I'm going to be the Susan Lucci of the James Beard Award.
Steven Satterfield said that as well too. So, how does that feel?
It's surprising. It really feels the first time it's like I was like, okay, cool. Now it's like, wow, that's so cool. So it really is, and I actually really hope I win.
Yes,
because I really want to. It's especially at my age at this particular point. I'll be 65 this year.
Wow.
So it's like, oh, okay. It's been a long time coming. And I'm really honored to be in the field or in an arena with so many gifted young chefs, and and there really are a lot of them. And so it's an honor at this juncture in my career to get this nomination. And I don't see myself, I can't see myself retiring. I don't know what I would do, but I'm slowing down. So this is a like a icing on the cake of my career. So
it's interesting. She says she's slowing down, but she actually cooks on the cook line.
Wow.
Almost every day of service. And that's not something she used to do, but that's what the pandemic has brought to us.
Oh yeah. Make no mistake, I am still a badass. I mean, I really am. I can hold my own. I just, sometimes, with double knee replacement and a hip replacement, it gets a little difficult, but they have to keep up with me.
And they have a challenge doing that. Sometimes.
Yeah, they do. But at this point, it's like, we had the pleasure of meeting Leah Chase a few years ago, and she was in her 70s, and she was still in the kitchen cooking at Dookie Chase. She came out and spoke with us for quite some time, and we kept saying, Miss Chase, would you like to have a seat? She's like, no. She kept talking because my thought is now that if she had sat down, she wouldn't have gotten back up. So she stood there for about 20 minutes talking to us, and then she went back into the kitchen to cook because that's what she did. And so I think to myself, you know what? I am not going to be 75 years old cooking.
Yes, you will.
But if that's what I have to do, that's what I'll do. And she was so gracious that, I mean, if I got to do that, I like to do it that way, with business and gratitude that I can.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. So thinking backwards, because you said you're 65, so you started this restaurant when you were 45.
Oh yeah, we're a little long in the tooth to do this.
Yeah, I mean, what advice do you have for these young chefs that are out there, and for somebody who started at 45 and doing this? Now you're James Beard semifinalist, and so what advice do you have for the young women coming into this industry now? And you could men too, but young women coming into this to get to where you are.
I think you need to stick with what you do and don't be swayed by what people say you can't do. And the reason that I think in part the restaurant is we're still here is because we do what we stick with our plan. We stick with what we do. You can't be all things to all people. So I think that if you're coming into this business thinking that it's going to be just all roses and it's not, you have to be willing to take the knocks. You have to be willing to get in there and be willing to stand your ground. I've had people that have, especially women that are just out of culinary school and they're on the line and somebody's saying something and they walk away and they're crying. It's like, whoa, no. There's no crying in the kitchen. There's no crying in baseball. There's no crying in the kitchen, unless you're peeling onions. You need to get back in there. And I'm if somebody's standing on your toes, get them off your toes and do your job. Know that it's going to be a hard job. It's not going to be Food Network. It's actually hard. And you have to be willing to take the knocks, take the heat so that you can get the job done. And in doing so, you'll get the next step. But you have to be willing to take a couple of punches and keep moving. And that really is, don't think it's going to be,
all glam and glitz.
It's not. And that Food Network thing has made it look as if
it really
is.
I mean, you could have that every day, but it's only really 5 minutes of glam, 5 minutes of that great praise. And then the rest of it is digging the ditch so that they can tell you that it was a nice hole that you dug. But you got to put in the pain and sweat of digging the ditch every day. You got to move that dirt every day. We wash dishes, we scrub bathrooms, we do whatever it takes. And to that person that's just starting out, you got to have a plan. You've got to be willing to stick to the plan. And then have an exit plan. You know, we, like most people, we wrote a business plan, we worked it out, we kind of smoothed it out. We really thought about that thing, and we use it even still today. It is our Bible. It is the thing we stick to our plan. Now the menu changes, things change, but we're Southern. We were Southern when we started, and we're Southern now. So our menu is going to be consistent of that. Our service, hopefully, is gracious Southern. And yeah, we have hiccups and bumps every single day, but don't we all?
Right.
But the plan is there. And what a lot of people find is that it's good. They figure out their menu, they figure out this and that, and foot traffic, all of those wonderful things that are going to get them open and sustain them. And then what? You really can't do it until you're 100.
Right.
And so that's the piece that we missed.
Yeah,
we forgot to do an exit plan. So we're here.
I'm right there with you too. Yes, I understand that. Yes. Okay. So 2 more questions for you. In the whole scope of your career, what does a safe and sustainable and inclusive dining experience mean to you?
To me, it means everything. And the components of that is a welcoming space, an accessible space, a non-judgment space. And then our food, we're Southern. So there's just not a lot of vegan things in traditional Southern food. But there are things that we can do to help try and accommodate you. Now, sometimes someone's food issues are beyond what we can do. So you can address that in a kind way, or you can be judgmental and harsh in how you say that. And we try to not be harsh. And we will try and accommodate people as best we can to whatever it is. And I think that goes a long way. When we have people come in, having servers that are knowledgeable about what we do and how we offer it, and being willing to say, I'm not sure, let me go check with the kitchen, as opposed to just being blanket. No, we don't do that. No, we don't do that. Sometimes it is going to be a no, but that doesn't mean that we're not inclusive, or it doesn't mean that we're not trying. It's just, it's just a lot.
And again, you really can't be all things to all people, but you can be welcoming to all people.
Yeah.
And that's I think what we do, because it's probably one of the most diverse restaurants that in town. Black, white, green, orange, gay, straight. As long as we try to make everyone comfortable. Our staff is a reflection of that. Our staff is a reflection of the world, I guess, and so we try to, so you can't help but be inclusive.
And we're okay with saying no, though. We had one server who was very flamboyant, or is very flamboyant. He doesn't work for us anymore, but he was very flamboyant, great server, great personality. And there was a couple that said to the host, we'll wait, but we don't want him to be our server. And so the host came and told me that. So I went and talked to the couple, because maybe we just misinterpreted what he meant. And so I went and had a conversation. It's like, oh no, I like the restaurant, but I don't want those kind of people waiting on me. So I had to ask him to leave. I said, so if you don't want those kind of people waiting on you, you don't want those people cooking your food, and you don't want those kind of people seating you, you don't want those kind of people serving your drink, because that's who we are. So you need to leave. And he was quite offended, but everybody should be comfortable. And if you're not willing to be comfortable in a space that is comfortable, then you're not going to spoil it for everybody else. And we're okay with that.
Yeah. Yeah. And I that says so much more. I mean, I'm giving a presentation this week for the State of Virginia School Nutrition Conference, and we're talking about what does inclusion mean at a school lunch table, right? Or in school nutrition. And it's like the kids who, that are gay or transgender, or they've got food allergies, or they come from, they're on the lunch program, right? And like, it doesn't matter who they are. Yeah. Like, lunch ladies, school nutritionist, everybody should be welcoming any of those kids to the table, no matter what. Yeah. And I like that you said that, if you're not comfortable, with in this space that is already comfortable, then you can leave. Right. Yeah. I think that's really, really important, because food nourishes us in so many ways. And that's another way of doing that.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay. So my last question for you is, how do you two want to be remembered in history? As the James Beard winner?
No, that would be cool though. No, that she fed people. I mean, she was good at feeding people. And that's kind of important, because that's how I remember my grandmother, as not only my grandmother, but she fed people. She fed anyone that came into her house. Didn't matter, and people, and all sorts of people came into her house, and she fed them. She gave them comfort and sustenance, and that, looking at people, that's what I want to remember this as being able to do, is to feed people.
I like that.
I hope that I could be remembered for someone that made room at the table. The conversation, for whatever it is, you need to be able to sit at the table and have that conversation. People oftentimes, behind closed doors, make those decisions, and there needs to be more room at the table.
I like that. I like that very much. You're going to make room at the table, and then she's going to make sure that they're fed at the same time.
There you go.
Yeah. Okay. So how does everyone find you? Where do they find you?
Well, we don't have a big social media, but our website is sweetpotatoes.ws. We're on Facebook, and Facebook is Sweet Potatoes, Well, Shut My Mouth, a restaurant. There is an Instagram out there, but it got hacked over a year ago, and Meta, Facebook, whatever you want to call it, it's not helpful in getting that page back. So if you see something on Instagram, it's not us.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
That's not good.
No.
My brother's been locked out of Facebook, and he blames me because he had it on his phone, and then I was trying to fix it, and I shut him out completely. So he blames me on the whole thing altogether. But okay, so I just posted your Facebook page on the Facebook pages on here, and I will post them on LinkedIn as well. I know you're not on LinkedIn, but I'm making sure that everybody on LinkedIn knows where you are. So when they come to Winston-Salem. And speaking of that, the Association Executives of North Carolina is having their event in Winston-Salem this summer, I believe. So if I'm not there before that, I will make sure that I'm there for that so that I can come eat there.
Well, one way or the other, we'll see you before then.
Yes. Hopefully, you'll see me in New Bern in April.
Yes.
Yeah. Oh, yes. I'm looking forward to that.
Yeah. And Pittsburgh in 2 weeks, right? At Sarah's. Yeah. Okay. And we're talking about La Dame Escoffier meetings that we're members of. So, yes. All right, ladies. Thank you so much. You make my heart warm.
Tracy, thank you.
Thank you.
You're welcome. So everybody check them out. And I will actually be here, not in this phone booth tomorrow, but I will be back live tomorrow, 12 o'clock, talking to Randy Weinstein of Fab. And until then, everybody have a fabulous day. Celebrate Women's History Month well. And that's all. Stay safe and eat well. Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks for listening to the Eating at a Meeting podcast, where every meal matters. I'm Tracy Stuckrath, your food and beverage inclusion expert. Call me and let's get started right now on creating safe and inclusive food and beverage experiences for your customers, your employees, and your communities. Share the podcast with your friends and colleagues at our Eating at a Meeting Facebook page and on all podcast platforms. To learn more about me and receive valuable information, go to tracystuckrath.com. And if you'd like more information on how to feed engagement, nourish inclusion, and bolster your bottom line, then visit eatingatameeting.com.